I want to ask you about testing, because I know this is an entire quagmire. And the answer to this question should be go to your site, freethyroidguide.com, to be able to get. Yeah, exactly. That's the answer for sure. But for the listeners, for the people listening, what are some of the common misconceptions as far as testing the thyroid goes?
All right. Well, I would just ask everyone listening, if you suspect you had a thyroid problem, you went and the doctor, quote, tested your thyroid, I would go back to those labs. And I would guarantee that you're still suffering because they only took 1 or 2 tests. And this is the way you can test my expertise. Just go back and look at your blood work. Tell you right now, they only tested TSH, or they only tested TSH and T4. There's 4 more tests. Okay. So so that's what they do. So when I have clients that come to me and they're like, I've been suffering for years, and they're like, no, my thyroid doctor, it's always the case where they've only tested TSH or TSH and T4. I'm just going to list the tests. Of course, you can get them in my free thyroid guide, but I'll just list them here. If you want to find out, do I or do I not have a thyroid problem? What the hell is going on? And I mean for hypothyroidism. So those would be the hypo symptoms. Graves' disease, another thing. For hypothyroidism, first of all, you always get tested within 2 to 3 hours after waking up. Fasting, but you can drink black coffee, black tea, water. Okay. So I don't care if you're on the late shift and you wake up at 11 a.m. That's fine. But just 2 to 3 hours within waking up. Don't eat, don't work out, don't take supplements, don't take medication. If you take thyroid medication, you take it after the test. Always. So if you're out there and you're like, that's weird, I've always been taking my medication before the test, I would ask this. I won't explain this whole thing, but I would just ask, if you're out there, you would know. Then if you're on T4 only and you're on levothyroxine, it wouldn't be as much of a problem. But if you're on T4, T3, or any medication containing T3 in it, and you took your medication before the test, then you have falsely elevated results and you could be still kept sick because of that. So we just don't. The reason is because 2 of the tests are free T3 and free T4, and I'll go through the list again. So hang in there with me. Free T4, free T3 means what's free, unbound, and available, not what did we just send coursing through our veins because I just swallowed it. By the way, I've done some experiments on myself. So I've gotten tested in the morning without thyroid hormone, and then taken my thyroid hormone, and then went back to the lab and got tested 2 hours later to see where the levels were when it would be peaking, things like that. Kind of some interesting stuff. So here are the tests that you need to get. TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3. And then there's 2 more. If you haven't gotten them, you always want to rule out, do I or do I not have Hashimoto's? Because there's a whole different set of shit that can go on for that you would need to know that. You want to rule that out. And there are 2 antibody tests for that. Most doctors only test you for 1. You can be positive for 1, negative for the other. You got to get both. So just rule it out. Those tests are thyroid peroxidase antibody, or otherwise known as TPO antibody. The second one is thyroglobulin, and it's usually referred to as TG antibody, but thyroglobulin antibody. So TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, TPO, thyroid peroxidase antibody, and TG, thyroglobulin antibody. Now, there are some other related tests. These are in my guide. You do want to get a comprehensive iron panel. You do want to get B12. You want to get vitamin D. Let's look into a couple of things. You don't need to get all of it. But even if you're just like, well, let me just start somewhere and see if even anything's off, all you need is those 6 tests. If you have already ruled out Hashimoto's or you got recent tests, again, if it's been a long time, you might want to check back in. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you're like, oh, I think someone tested me 10 years ago and I didn't have Hashimoto's. I'm like, get your shit tested again. I'm not buying it. Like, you know what I mean? So those are the tests. And if your doctor never took those tests, then that is one way to tell that you're with the dum-dums. Literally. And again, unintentional dum-dums, I'm saying like this to know better, but they're uninformed. So one of the success stories in my book, Kara, and she also has an audio testimonial about this on my website under my free thyroid, not the free thyroid guide, but my thyroid masterclass webpage. If you go to it, you can hear some testimonials of people. Kara had 2 miscarriages. She suffered forever. And when I was like, get your blood work out. Your endocrinologist for the past 8 years, like I want to see. And of course, they only tested TSH and T4. So now, if you want a whole in-depth explanation of all of this and like the thyroid hormones and what labs look like, I have an amazing cheap thyroid masterclass. That's a mini version of my signature ultimate thyroid course, which is a 22-hour thing with doctors and experts and people. But the thyroid masterclass is amazing and it is really substantial and robust and it's $27. And that way you also can go, how does she teach this? Do I even need her course? Sometimes that's all people need is the thyroid masterclass. And you'll see a lot of people are like, I've never had my condition explained to me ever until I went into this masterclass, because you're talking to someone who, I know this stuff. I am a thyroid patient. And so it's a 2 hour, it's like 2.5 hours. It's like a 2 hour video. There is an audio of me going through like 30, 40 symptoms and my personal experience with them. There's excerpts from my book, my before and after pictures of my fat bloated self and then my non-hypo self, testimonials. There's paleo recipes in there, my free thyroid guide. So that's a great place. If you're like, I don't know anything about this and I like kind of need to wrap my head around it, but I don't want to invest a lot of time or money, take the thyroid masterclass. And if you just want to start with the guide and just go get tested, go to freethyroidguide.com and just go in there and, get in there and get the right test. Testing is essential. I've done some free thyroid Q&As in the past, and I always say, hey guys, if you don't give me these tests that I just mentioned, I'm going to tell you, go get these tests. They're all so critical. Usually what happens is, and I want to warn everyone, this is like one of the biggest problems that happens. You go to your doctor because you heard me and you're like, hey, you bring them this list and they go, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. They fill out the form. They don't check it. They don't ask you. They don't argue with you. They just go, she's dumb. She's not a doctor. I'm not testing that. And they don't test it. So here's what happens. You go to the lab. You trusted that your doctor who said they were going to test you checked that shit on the fucking lab form. They didn't. You go in there. You get your blood taken. You get the results back. You're like, where's the reverse T3? I asked for the reverse T3. And then you're crying to me. And this happens all, this is why I bring this up. Because first of all, it feels like gaslighting. It feels really horrible because you're like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say I'm not going to test that instead of trick me and let me just go into the lab and be like, again, because they're like, you don't know anything. You're dumb. I'm not going to, right? So you have to go to the phlebotomist and you have to go, will you bring in my list? And you hand it to the phlebotomist. You go, I need to make sure all of these things are on there. Can you just double check that for me? And if they say, oh, it's missing this and missing that, you walk out. Would you want to go twice in a month to get a needle in your arm? I don't, right? Because you're going to have to go back and you're going to be pissed and you're going to feel wronged. And I'm warning you now, it's going to happen. It happened even when I warned someone just like this and they heard everything I just said and it still happened.
Wow.
So please, everybody, don't trust that your doctor has agreed with these things that you're going to test. There's going to be one or two in there that go, you don't need that.